I remember that camping trip vividly, as if it happened just yesterday. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend getaway with my family, a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. Little did we know, it would turn into a nightmarish experience that still haunts our dreams. We arrived at the secluded campsite, deep within the heart of a dense forest. Tall trees loomed ominously over us, their branches casting eerie shadows on the ground below. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and there was an unsettling stillness that hung in the atmosphere. As we set up our tents and gathered firewood, the day turned to evening. We lit a campfire, its crackling flames providing some comfort in the growing darkness. We roasted marshmallows and told stories, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over us. But then, as the night wore on, an acrid and sickening smell began to permeate the air. It was a scent like nothing I had ever encountered before, a nauseating combination of burnt hair and something sweetly sickening, like molten caramel. My wife and I exchanged worried glances, and my children started to whimper. Maybe it's just a skunk, I tried to reassure them, though my own unease was growing by the minute. But deep down, I knew this was no skunk. The smell grew stronger, almost suffocating, and it seemed to be emanating from the forest surrounding us. It was as if the very woods themselves were tainted by this grotesque odor. Curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I decided to investigate. With a flashlight in hand, I ventured into the forest, leaving my family huddled around the campfire. The further I went, the thicker the smell became, until it was almost unbearable. And then, as the beam of my flashlight swept across a small clearing, my heart stopped. There, in the center of the clearing, lay a gruesome sight that will forever be etched into my memory. A lifeless, mangled body, charred and twisted, lay in a grotesque pose. It was as if the person had been roasted alive. I stumbled back in shock, my heart pounding in my chest. The smell was overwhelming now, and I could barely breathe. My mind raced, filled with terror and confusion. Who could have done such a thing? And why had they left the body here, in the middle of the forest? Without wasting a second, I turned and ran back to my family. I told them what I had seen, and panic set in. We knew we had to leave that place, that cursed campsite, immediately. We hastily packed up our belongings, not caring about the mess we left behind. The eerie darkness of the forest seemed to close in around us as we hurriedly retreated to our car. The smell of death and decay clung to us, as if it were trying to follow us. As we drove away from that nightmarish campsite, the haunting image of the charred body and the sickening smell lingered in our minds. We never reported what we had found to the authorities, the fear of what we might uncover was too great. To this day, we can't forget that camping trip from hell, and we've never set foot in those woods again. The memory of that dreadful night and the sinister secrets hidden in those dark, twisted trees will haunt us forever, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most peaceful of places. The wilderness had always beckoned to us, promising adventure and a deep connection with nature. So, my friend Jake and I decided to embark on a remote camping trip far from civilization. We trekked into the heart of the dense forest, where the only sounds were the rustling leaves and the distant cries of the wildlife. It was blissfully peaceful, the kind of serenity that made us feel like we were the last people on Earth. As night fell, we huddled around our campfire, sharing stories and laughter under a star-studded sky. The crackling flames cast eerie shadows on the towering trees, but we felt invincible, wrapped in the cocoon of our friendship. But our peaceful night took a terrifying turn when, in the dead of night, I was jolted awake by a chilling sound, a faint, ominous rustling. My heart pounded like a drum, and my eyes darted around, trying to make sense of the darkness. "Did you hear that?" I whispered to Jake, who was still asleep beside me. He stirred, bleary-eyed, and mumbled, "Hear what?" Before I could respond, the rustling grew louder, accompanied by a faint scraping noise. Panic coursed through my veins. I knew we were in the wilderness, but this felt different, wrong. As the noise drew closer, the truth became unmistakable. There was someone or something outside our tents. My mind raced, imagining all sorts of horrors lurking in the shadows. I fumbled for my flashlight and aimed its beam towards the source of the disturbance. The tent fabric rippled as if a phantom were caressing it. My breath caught in my throat, and a cold sweat coated my trembling skin. Someone was trying to unzip our tent, inching their way inside with a deliberate, sinister intent. "Get out!" I roared, my voice trembling with fear and rage. I unzipped the tent with a violent jerk, the flashlight revealing a shadowy figure retreating into the night, their face hidden behind a mask. Their footsteps echoed in the distance as they vanished into the obsidian forest. My heart pounded relentlessly, and my hands shook uncontrollably as I zipped the tent shut again. Jake, now fully awake and wide-eyed, asked, "Who was that?" "I don't know," I replied, my voice shaky. "But we need to get out of here." The tension in the air was palpable. We sat in silence, our ears straining to catch any sign of the intruder's return. The minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity, each rustle of leaves sending shivers down our spines. As the first light of dawn broke, we made a hurried decision to pack up and leave, abandoning our once-cherished campsite. Fear had replaced our sense of adventure, and we couldn't shake the chilling thought of that masked intruder. We walked away from the wilderness, our hearts heavy with unanswered questions. The mystery of the intruder's intentions haunted us, leaving us with a lingering sense of vulnerability. The wilderness, once a place of enchantment, had become a sinister enigma, reminding us that even in the most remote corners of the earth, darkness could encroach upon the light and fear could extinguish the thrill of the wild. The crisp mountain air cut through the dense forest, filling my lungs as I trekked deeper into the wilderness. The plan was simple: embark on a challenging hike to a serene, untouched lake, a hidden gem known only to a few adventurous souls like myself. The idea of solitude and tranquility drew me in like a moth to a flame, but little did I know that this adventure would take a sinister twist. Hours of relentless walking had left me fatigued, and the forest around me was swallowed by shadows as the sun dipped below the towering trees. As the daylight waned, an unsettling feeling crept over me. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a night bird. It was as though the very forest held its breath, anticipating something I couldn't comprehend. And then it happened, a strange encounter that sent shivers racing down my spine. A pale, luminescent figure flickered in and out of sight among the trees. My heart pounded in my chest as I stumbled backward, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was an entity, a being that seemed both ethereal and otherworldly. It moved with an eerie grace, its form constantly shifting, like mist taking shape in the moonlight. Fear gnawed at me, and I wanted to run, to flee from this unearthly presence, but my legs felt like lead. The entity's eyes, if they could be called eyes, locked onto mine for a brief, agonizing moment, and a sensation of dread washed over me. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished into the inky darkness of the forest. I stumbled onward, my heart still racing, and finally reached the campsite I had been aiming for. As I approached, a gut-wrenching feeling settled in my stomach. There, by the flickering firelight, stood a man, but he was unlike any man I had ever seen. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were dark voids that seemed to suck in the very essence of the night. He didn't speak a word, didn't even acknowledge my presence. He simply stood there, silently observing me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. I tried to muster the courage to ask who he was or what he wanted, but my voice failed me. The man's presence was suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he held some terrible secret, something beyond human understanding. And then, with a deliberate step, he turned and melted into the surrounding darkness, disappearing into the woods like a specter. Alone and on edge, I spent a sleepless night, clutching a pocket knife for protection, my every sense heightened to the slightest rustle or whisper in the night. I felt as though I was being watched, as though the very forest itself held malevolent secrets. When morning finally broke, I wasted no time in packing up my campsite and fleeing from that accursed place. The enigma of the stranger's presence haunted my thoughts as I made my way back down the treacherous trail. Unanswered questions swirled in my mind, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I had stumbled upon something ancient and sinister, something that should have remained hidden in the depths of the forest. The wilderness stretched out before me like a gaping maw, swallowing any trace of civilization with every step I took deeper into its heart. The forest canopy seemed to swallow the last vestiges of daylight, leaving me in the clutches of an inky blackness that seemed to have a life of its own. I had always been an avid camper, but this remote trail, unmarked on any map, had me questioning the wisdom of my adventure. With every step, the gnarled branches of ancient trees seemed to reach out, their skeletal fingers clutching at my clothing. My flashlight cast eerie, elongated shadows that danced like specters in the night. The wind whispered secrets through the leaves, and I felt an inexplicable unease creeping over me. Hours passed, and I began to realize that I was hopelessly lost. Panic began to claw at the edges of my mind, threatening to consume me entirely. I knew that I needed to find my way back to safety before darkness swallowed me whole. And then, as if conjured by my fears, I stumbled upon a small clearing in the woods. In its center, a flickering campfire illuminated four figures sitting in a tight circle, their faces obscured by the shadows of the flames. Relief washed over me. I approached cautiously, hope mingling with trepidation. "Hey there," I called out, my voice trembling. "I'm lost. Can you help me find my way back to the trail?" The strangers remained silent, their faces still hidden in the shadows. Unease began to gnaw at me again, a gnawing feeling that something was terribly wrong. I took a cautious step closer. It was then that I noticed it, a glint of steel in the firelight, a flash of malevolence. My heart raced as I realized that each of them held a gleaming knife in their hands. Fear engulfed me, and I knew I had to do something. My hand reached for the firearm I carried for emergencies. The metallic rasp of my fingers brushing against the cold steel of the gun sounded deafening in the stillness of the night. I raised the firearm into the air and fired a single shot. The deafening crack echoed through the forest, scattering birds into the night sky and causing the figures by the campfire to recoil in terror. They scattered like shadows, disappearing into the underbrush with their knives still clutched tightly in their hands. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched them vanish into the darkness, their sinister intentions left unspoken but unmistakably clear. As the echoes of the gunshot faded, I was left alone in the eerie stillness of the wilderness once more. The campfire continued to flicker, casting its macabre dance of light and shadow, but the sense of the unknown weighed heavily upon me. What would have happened if I hadn't been armed? What were the stranger's intentions? I may never know the answers to these questions, but one thing was certain: I had ventured into a darkness far more chilling than any wilderness, and the eerie sense of the unknown would haunt me forever. In college, my girlfriend and I embarked on a chilling adventure, camping and hunting on a desolate island nestled in the eerie depths of coastal Louisiana. Our journey started innocently enough as I navigated my boat through the murky waters toward our minuscule plot of land. A sense of isolation settled over us as we anchored near the shore, where I planted a looming 4-foot aluminum rod deep into the eerie sands, securing our only lifeline to civilization. As we ventured into the foreboding wilderness, a sinister atmosphere enveloped the island. Our first ordeal was the relentless onslaught of bloodthirsty mosquitoes, their insatiable hunger driving us to the brink of madness. But that was just the beginning. Deep in the overgrown thickets, we encountered sinister signs of massive hogs lurking in the shadows. Their malevolent presence sent shivers down our spines, and a palpable sense of dread hung heavy in the air. We strained our senses, but the eerie silence was shattered only by the occasional glimpse of a sinister sunset, casting an otherworldly glow over the forsaken landscape. And then, as the sun dipped below the horizon, our nightmarish descent truly began. A veil of darkness descended upon us, and I realized I had forgotten a flashlight. Panic set in as the ominous rustling of the unseen swine surrounded us. My only source of light was the feeble laser on my AR, which proved utterly useless in the oppressive blackness. My girlfriend's terrified cries echoed through the thickets as the malevolent hogs closed in, concealed by the impenetrable night. We pressed forward cautiously, navigating by sound alone, our hearts pounding with fear. Somehow, we managed to escape the clutches of the unseen horrors and found our way back to camp. There, we were faced with a new menace: wild cows, their eyes reflecting the cold, eerie light of the moon through the thick fog. One of them, in a fit of madness, shattered one of my tent poles. Desperation consumed us as we huddled around a meager fire, seeking solace in its feeble warmth. Wet, cold, and utterly exhausted, we tried to endure the nightmarish ordeal that had befallen us. But the climax of our terror was yet to come. I awoke to a deafening roar, the unholy symphony of waves crashing with an ungodly force. It was as if a hurricane had descended upon us, and I knew that something was horribly wrong. My heart pounded as I raced to the shore, relying solely on the dim moonlight and the feeble glow of the laser. To my horror, the boat, our sole lifeline, was nowhere to be seen. Panic seized me, and I shed my pants and weapon before plunging into the frigid waters of the ship channel. With every stroke, error coursed through my veins as I navigated the treacherous waters in pursuit of our lost vessel. Tangled in a nightmarish maze of trees and debris, it seemed like a doomed endeavor. But through sheer determination, I managed to recover the boat as the first light of dawn broke. Exhausted and shaken, we abandoned our camp, leaving behind the haunting memories of that fateful night. It was a nightmarish ordeal, one that would forever haunt my dreams and serve as a chilling reminder of the untold horrors that can lurk in the shadows of the wilderness. A few years ago, I made a fateful decision to go camping with a group of about 10 friends at Snively Hot Springs in the desolate wilds of eastern Oregon. It was Friday the 13th, and a sinister full moon cast an eerie glow over our destination. I had to work the next day, so I resolved not to drink too much, fearing the specter of a hangover. As night descended upon us, we pitched our tents in a remote spot, far from other campers. We indulged in a bit of alcohol and began our descent into a world of laughter and camaraderie while soaking in the hot springs, basking in the last rays of the setting sun. It was a perfect night, one of those moments when life feels truly enchanting. But as the majority of us decided to embark on a moonlit walk through the rugged mountains, things took a dark turn. Half of our group was ready to go, while the others were sluggish, some lost in a haze of alcohol and substances. Herding everyone into a state of readiness in the impenetrable darkness proved to be a daunting task. As we ventured into the inky night, guided only by a feeble flashlight, we found ourselves ascending a steep path for about 10 minutes before veering onto a narrow trail. Our first ominous sign should have been the cattle guard, a forbidding metal grid that marked the trailhead. Nevertheless, we crossed it, venturing deeper into the unknown. Just minutes into our ill-fated journey, a spine-chilling rustling noise shattered the silence, close enough to send shivers down our spines. We halted abruptly, our senses on high alert, and the person in front began scanning the darkness with our only source of light. What we beheld sent a chill down my spine that I will never forget: the luminous, predatory eyes of a massive mountain lion, a mere few yards ahead of us. Instinct took over as we began to retreat, our hearts pounding with primal fear. Yet, the dog accompanying us had instincts of its own and darted off to the side. We could see her running alongside us, a few yards away. Our blood ran cold as we shone the flashlight towards her, only to reveal another chilling sight: a second mountain lion, stalking us in parallel. Our ill-fated trio had unwittingly stumbled upon a mother and her cub. Trapped between the beasts and a barbed wire fence, we had no choice but to face a perilous ordeal. We got the dog across first, then leaped the fence, tearing our clothing to shreds in the process. My friend suffered a deep gash on his leg during the escape. On the other side of the fence lay an unsuspecting campsite, belonging to someone else. Panic surged as we realized our predicament. We scrambled into their unlocked car, honking the horn furiously in an attempt to deter the hungry predators. We shouted and screamed, making it clear that we posed no threat to the campers. Astonishingly, no one emerged from their tents to investigate the commotion. My friend claimed he heard faint, distant screams, but I urged him to prioritize our escape over the enigma of the silent campsite. Finally free from the camp, we ventured towards the exit, still haunted by the unexplained eeriness of the deserted site. My thoughts raced, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something unspeakable might have taken place there. We trekked back to our own campsite, my heart heavy with the dread of the night's terrors. In the sanctuary of our camp, I was tormented by paranoia, convinced that the mountain lions were still lurking in the shadows, stalking our every move. For an agonizing hour, I suffered a full-blown panic attack inside the car, my mind teetering on the brink of madness. The relentless gnats, swarming through the cracked sunroof, added to my torment. Meanwhile, my oblivious friends reveled around the campfire, disconnected from the horrors I had witnessed. In a gesture of extraordinary courage, my friend joined me in the car, enduring the swarm of insects to comfort me in my hour of terror. She brought a bottle of tequila and a stash of mushrooms, urging me to embrace a fearless end if we were destined to meet our doom. It was then that I summoned the strength to rejoin my friends and face the chilling night. The aftermath left me reeling, nursing a hangover from hell and bearing the weight of a lost job upon my return to civilization. Yet, despite the trauma, the nightmarish encounter with those mountain lions remains etched in my memory. Their ghostly presence continues to haunt my dreams, a perpetual reminder of the bone-chilling ordeal we survived in the moonlit wilderness. As I ventured alone into the eerie depths of the California wilderness, I clung to the idea of solitude. So nobody else will be there, I told myself, and I can have the trail all by myself. But what I hadn't anticipated was just how terrifyingly unprepared I truly was. The weight of my overly heavy gear bore down on me like a sinister omen as I trudged along the desolate, closed trail. My heart raced, not from the fear of snakes, bears, or coyotes, but from the silent, relentless dread of encountering a cougar. The paranoia gnawed at my sanity as I swore I saw the sinister silhouette of a lurking cougar in the distance, or so my fevered mind insisted. Stricken by my inability to see clearly without my glasses, the forest's depths blurred into a disorienting haze beyond 30 feet. I pushed on, my throat parched as my water supply rapidly dwindled. Desperation led me to an eerie, flat clearing off the trail. There, I decided to set up my camp, making a boneheaded decision that I hoped would deter both animals and people alike, positioning my snug pack ionosphere tent on an inclining slope. The tent setup was easy enough, but my feeble attempt to construct a wood shelter proved futile. Instead, I scattered the sticks around my tent for a makeshift camouflage. That's when it began, voices, disturbingly human voices, echoing through the impenetrable darkness. I cowered in my tent, clinging to my Bluetooth radio for solace, drowning out the unsettling sounds of the forest. But then the voices grew closer, accompanied by eerie footsteps in the pitch-black night. Who in their right mind would be hiking in a forest shrouded in total darkness? My spine stiffened as anxiety gripped me. I mustered the courage to yell a feeble hello into the abyss, only to be met with silence. Terrified, I clutched my Bowie knife, my sleeping bag unzipped and ready for a hasty escape. I braced myself, threatening to defend myself with words and blade, shouting into the night, praying to deter whatever sinister presence lurked nearby. Then, the forest came alive with a cacophonous rush of thunderous footsteps and rustling brush, drawing ever nearer. I grabbed my flashlight and bolted for my tent, clad only in long johns and brandishing my knife like a desperate warrior. I'm going to gut you and feast on your remains. I bellowed into the impenetrable darkness. You think I'm unarmed in these woods? I'm insane, and I'll slay anyone who dares cross my path. With frenzied determination, I combed the trail, desperately searching for any trace of the malevolent presence that had haunted my nightmarish solitude. My heart pounded as I returned to my tent, fearing the worst. My ordeal continued when I tried to call my best friend, seeking some semblance of connection and safety, but only incomprehensible garbles filled the line. The crushing loneliness was suffocating, like being abandoned in a world of shadows. In the frigid, eternal night, I lay there paralyzed by fear. And then it happened, a guttural, otherworldly inhale, an ominous sound akin to a great beast drawing in a sinister breath. My mind raced as I lay frozen, the word "pray" pounding in my skull. Another eerie lip smack, so close it was almost intimate, sent chills down my spine. I awoke at the break of dawn, emerging from my tent with a sense of relief. With my phone's last breath, I captured crude images of massive cougar prints surrounding my campsite. Gathering my belongings, I fled to my car, desperately seeking the sanctuary of civilization. But even there, my twisted tale took another sinister turn. The arrival of two high schoolers, speaking in hushed Spanish, sent shivers down my spine. What kind of twisted souls would venture into these woods while darkness still held sway? As I drove away, trembling and haunted, I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had watched me from the shadows that fateful night, lurking in the heart of the unforgiving wilderness.